Hello everyone, welcome to this chapter, and we are going to talk about market failures caused by externalities and asymmetric information. But first we will talk about how market economies, free markets with using demand and supply efficiently allocates resources. And next we are going to talk about the situations where markets actually fail to allocate resources efficiently and leads to an inefficient outcome like externalities. I will explain what an externality is in the following slides. But if we have a market failure, it may be a good idea to have government to intervene to the markets and actually make decisions and help to make decisions to move the market outcome to a socially optimal one. So what is a market failure? As I said, markets are an efficient way to allocate resources through demand and supply. Why? Because when you demand something, you actually show your willingness to pay. And given your willingness to pay, firms are producing the product that you demand. And at the end, you get what you want and sellers get their profit. And therefore, both sides are happy. But there are cases markets fail to produce the right amount of the product. And just remember that efficient outcome requires market demand should reflect the full willingness to pay of every person in the market, and market supply curve must reflect all costs of production. So here I want to give you an example so that understand a case where markets fail to produce the right amount of the product. Here let's talk about pollution. In case of pollution, let's say an energy company producing electricity dumps poisonous gas to the air. So this is the pollution, okay? And this pollution actually may hurt someone's health. Let's say some people get sick because of the pollution in the air. So there is a cost right here to these people, which is the health cost. And energy production is a company, as I said, firms. These firms have their cost to produce energy. So that is actually reflected in the supply curve. Supply curve represents the cost to the firms. So willingness to pay is on the demand curve. Market demand curve must reflect full willingness to pay for every person. Market supply curve must reflect all costs of production. Here, in the case of pollution, actually, the market supply curve does not show all the costs. It shows the costs of production of electricity, but it does not show this external cost, which is health cost to the people. Therefore, markets fail in that scenario because it does not represent the cost to the people who have health problems due to pollution in the air. And we will learn in this chapter that total surplus is consumer surplus plus producer surplus, but we need to first define what a consumer surplus is and what a producer surplus is. So let's define a consumer surplus. It's the difference between what a consumer is willing to pay for a good and what the consumer actually pays. It's the extra benefit from paying less than a maximum price. Let's assume that you are very hungry and you are with your friends. Let's say there is a hamburger you find in a store and it looks delicious. And you don't know the price and you just think that, okay, I'm willing to pay $13 for this hamburger. You ask your friend and how much she is willing to pay, and you said $11. Okay, so these are your willingness to pay. Willingness to pay. And you get into the store and find out that the hamburger price is $10. So you'll be very happy, right? Your willingness to pay is $13 and you're paying $10. So this difference between your willingness to pay and the price is your consumer surplus. And for your friend, the consumer surplus is lower because her willingness to pay is 11 minus the price is $1. So as you see, consumer surplus is the extra benefit from paying less than the maximum price. What if the hamburger price is $14? Then both of you are not going to get any consumer surplus because you're not going to buy this hamburger because your willingness to pay is less than the price. In that case, consumer surplus is 0. Here, another example from your book. This is an example of a movie ticket where Bob, Barb, Bill, Bija, Brent, and Blessing has willingness to pay, which we call it marginal benefit. And the actual price of the movie ticket is $8. And as you see, Bob has $5 of consumer surplus. Why? Willingness to pay minus the price. And Barb has $4. And Bill has $3. And finally, Blessing has 0 because Blessing's willingness to pay is $8 and movie ticket price is $8. And these are the individual buyers' consumer surplus. But in reality, we are actually trying to find what is the market consumer surplus. So when I say market consumer surplus, I want to understand the total surplus of all buyers in the market. So it is represented by this area, the green triangle, where you have the area between the demand curve and the price. Price, let's say, is P1, and let's say barb is here. Barb with having $12 of willingness to pay, and the price is $8. So this distance, you see, this is the barb here, and the equilibrium price, which is $8. This distance, which is $4, is the consumer surplus of barb. And if I want to find the consumer surplus of the market, there's another person here. I'll calculate that one. Another one, and assume that this is a continuum line. There is no steps, and therefore it's going to be the area of this triangle, which is the consumer surplus. Now let's understand the producer surplus. Producer surplus is the difference between the actual price a producers receive and the minimum price they would accept. So which is the extra benefit from receiving higher price. So let's say for this hamburger example, for the producers it cost them $5 to make the hamburger, and they are selling it $10. As you see, the difference is their surplus. So how much you're selling in the market price minus cost to the seller is the producer surplus. Here again, the example is for a movie ticket, and you have Chandler, Chaya, Chuck, Chazan, Chauma, Chad. All of them are showing their minimum acceptable price, which is cost to them to serve this movie in the market, and their cost is $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, and $8. And if we want to calculate the producer surplus, we will take the price, which is $8, and subtract cost to them, or minimum acceptable price. Then you will find the producer surplus for Chandler. Okay, so let's assume Chandler is somewhere here. Okay, and this is, let's say, $3, and this is the price, which is $8. Then the distance between price and the supply curve is Chandler's producer surplus, which is $5. And now assume that there are many sellers in the market with different producer surplus. So the market producer surplus is this triangular area where you have the price, the area between the price and the supply curve. So what is total surplus? Total surplus is consumer surplus plus producer surplus. If you remember, consumer surplus is this green triangle, and the blue triangle is the producer surplus. So the entire area, the sum of CS plus PS, is the total surplus. Now let's talk about efficiency losses from an underproduction. So in this scenario, as you see, the production supposed to be in the market equilibrium, what we have learned, should be Q1. This is the efficient allocation. But for some reason, production stopped at Q2. So that means at Q2, demand is here and supply is here. So at Q2, willingness to pay here and willingness to sell is here. And what is happening is, let's explain that with a simple example. If not enough goods are produced, like in this case, Q2 amount of goods, let's say this is 100K, but the optimal is 150K, there is a loss of efficiency. And we call this area here, as you see, dead weight loss. And you can understand dead weight loss with a simple example. Let's say if a toy store makes fewer toys than people want to buy, some people won't be able to get a toy, which means there is a loss to benefit for both buyers and sellers. So let's say toys are produced 100K, but there is one person here and there is one seller here. He is willing to sell at the market price because he's making money, and he's willing to buy at the market price. Why? Because he is also benefiting from the market price because his willingness to pay is higher. But this transaction doesn't happen, and that's called dead weight loss. Why? Because we didn't produce enough goods to sell that person. Okay, we didn't sell that person, and we didn't use the production of this person. Okay, so demand curve orders the willingness to pay from highest to lowest, and the people who have the highest willingness to pay get the good. And if you stop production at Q2, there are some individuals whose willingness to pay is still higher than the market price if we have the free market, and there are sellers whose willingness to sell is lower than the market price, but that transaction doesn't happen, although both of them are going to benefit from this transaction, and that's called deadweight loss. Now let's look at a case where we have efficiency losses from overproduction. If too many goods are produced, there is also a loss of efficiency. For instance, if the bakery makes too much bread and some of it goes to waste, the resources used to make that bread are wasted. So what happens here is that the supply is this much, right? And we see that, okay, somebody here and somebody here produces the good, but their willingness to sell is higher than what people are willing to pay at this point, okay? So a person here wants to pay, let's say, $5, but that person to produce that amount of bread spends, let's say, $7 to produce just the bread, okay? In that case, we have again an efficiency loss because these products here are not going to be sold, because their price is going to be higher than what people are willing to pay. That's why it's an efficiency loss from overproduction. The same as like the example I said, bread is going to be wasted because you can't sell these bread to people. And next we will talk about market failures, which one of them is externality. So what is an externality? An externality is a cost or benefit occurring to a third party external to the market transaction. So let's go back to the pollution example. This is the company dumping poisonous gas to the market, and this company is producing energy and it has a cost of production to the company, and there are buyers here. They are buying the electricity, so they have willingness to pay and they pay some to the company, and company has minimum willingness to sell. So the company only sees cost of production. And here, let's say because of the poisonous gas, there are people who are not buyers of this company's product, but they have health problems due to this poisonous gas. And that leads to what? That leads to actually health costs. But the company doesn't see that cost to the society. So when I say if there is a market allocation which is efficient, then the cost curve, which is the supply curve, should reflect all the cost of production. But in that case, we don't see the health costs that people are having due to poisonous gas. Okay, so pollution is an example of negative externality. In a case of pollution, too much is produced, and this is a supply side market failure. But we might have positive externalities too. A good example is education for positive externalities. So what happens in a positive externality? So you're a student, you're actually benefiting as a buyer, benefiting from going to college, right? And then schools are earning money, perfect. But there is another external effect of education that affects other people. They are not part of the college, they are not student, or they are not part of the educational system, which is actually this external benefit is when the education level increases, crime rates are decreasing. So crime rates are decreasing. Okay, so this leads to a safe environment. As you see, there is an external benefit to a third party. Okay, in case of education, we have positive spillovers. And when we have positive externality, we do not actually see the total benefit to the society. Therefore, demand curve just only reflects the student's benefit, but there are additional benefits to the society, which is not actually reflected on the demand curve. Therefore, it's a demand side market failure, and too little is produced in case of positive externality. So let's see positive and negative externalities on a graph. So in this case here, we say that supply curve does not reflect all the cost, right, in the negative externality, because there is a health cost which is not included. But if we can include that health cost on top of production cost, okay, the total cost is going to be higher than what the existing firms are actually showing on the supply curve. Therefore, the true supply curve should be ST. Because if you remember from chapter 3, when the cost increases, when you add additional cost, supply is going to go down. Therefore, the true cost is ST to the population. But since we don't see the health costs, we have too much production, which is C. You see, quantity equilibrium is the market outcome, too much production. But the true one should be ST, because this now represents the cost of production plus health costs. Okay, two costs are represented and supply is shifting to the left. And therefore, the true outcome or optimal outcome for the society should be Q0. Now let's look at this one. We know that demand curve does not actually show the true benefit. So this is the benefit to the college students, right? They benefit because they attend college, they get a good job, they get an increase in their wage. But the true benefit is college students benefit plus the benefit to the society, which lower crime rates. When the benefit is higher, demand should be at a higher point, shift to the right. Therefore, the true demand curve, or the true one, I say, it's the one that reflects both college students benefit and benefit to the society is DT. But we have this D, right? Because of D, supply and demand intersects at Q equilibrium, and the optimal is Z with the new demand curve and existing supply, which is QO. As you see, what happened here is that we have too less production of the goods that have positive externalities. So how we can fix this? Because the market economy by buyers and sellers are not going to consider health costs in case of pollution, or the benefit to the society like lower crime rates in case of positive externality, which is education. Now, in order to correct externality, we need government's help. So governments can sometimes improve market outcomes and can fix externalities. So for negative externalities, governments can limit pollution with rules or taxes and making the production more expensive. For positive externalities, governments can give money, subsidies to encourage people to go to college. That will benefit everyone. So here is the example for correcting negative externalities. As I said, in case of negative externalities, market economies are producing too much. This is the supply curve. So we need to shift the supply curve back, and we need to increase the cost. When the cost increases, I'm repeating, supply shifts to the left. So how we can do that? We can actually do via direct controls. Government can ask companies to set up some cleaning process, so they need to invest into that equipment, which increases the cost and therefore shifting the supply curve to the left. Or government tax these companies, so by paying tax, firms' cost increases, therefore supply again shifts to the left, so we reach to the optimal outcome instead of market equilibrium. Let's look at the global perspective. As you see on the figure, different countries charge taxes on carbon emissions at different rates to help reduce pollution. For example, Norway charges a higher carbon tax than the US to reduce their emissions more quickly. And the lowest ones are Brazil and China. Here you can see correcting positive externalities. And just to recap, in positive externalities, demand is too low because we didn't consider the benefit to the society. The true demand curve should be at a higher point. So we are producing too less and we need to increase the demand. That means we need to subsidize buyers to buy more of this good. And one way, as I said, government subsidize buyers, in that case college students, in the form of scholarships, grants, and so on, so that they can go to college and more people get education. Therefore, we reach the socially optimal level. Another way is actually government can subsidize the producers. When government subsidizes producers, the amount of schools may increase, right? When you have more schools in the market while supply shifts to the right, the price of education goes down. So that can also make the society reach to optimal level of education. And when the price is lower, more college students are going to enroll into college. So let's summarize what we have learned. There are different ways to fix externalities. Negative externalities like pollution has spillover cost, and we have the overproduction of output and therefore overallocation of resources. How we can correct this? You can read them through the book, but mainly I talk about direct controls and taxes on producers, which are increasing the cost and shifting the supply curve to the left, reaching to optimal level. And we might have private bargaining, liability rules and lawsuits, and we can just set up market for externality rights. For positive externalities have spillover benefits, and there is the underproduction of output and therefore underallocation of resources. And how we can solve or correct the positive externalities: private bargaining, subsidies to consumers, subsidies to producers, and government provision. And now you see on the screen marginal cost, marginal benefit, and optimal abatement. And here, when the marginal benefit equals marginal cost, we reach to socially optimal level. That's what we learned in the first week of the class. There is the Cauchy theorem, which is the private sector bargaining can solve externality problem. And this actually doesn't need the government's role in correcting externalities. So what happened here is that, let's say your neighbor has a barking dog and you cannot sleep because of the barking at night. So how you can solve this externality problem, which is an external cost to you and to your health? You can actually pay the owner of the dog to get rid of the dog. You know, it's really hard, but this is the theory. Or the owner can pay you money that you are agreeing to sleep with a barking dog at night. So that is the Cauchy theorem. There is no government intervention here, but the market agents solve the problem by bargaining rights to have externality. And optimal reduction of externality is not an easy task. Why? Because officials must correctly identify the existence of the externality and cause of it, and therefore we might have government failure in that case. So we started with market failure, and in case government doesn't correctly identify the existence and cause, they may not identify the optimal reduction of an externality, which is government failure. And now let's talk about asymmetric information. Asymmetric information occurs one party to a transaction possesses private information that's not readily available to the other party at a low cost. So, example, for instance, sellers may know more about their product, okay, like a gas station selling poor quality fuel. Without regulations, buyers would not know the quality. And the same can happen, for instance, for a used car. So you go buy a used car, seller knows very well about the car, but this private information may not be available to you. Then we have the asymmetric information problem. And there could be cases like when buyers know more, like someone buying health insurance while hiding an existing health problem. The insurance company, the seller in that case, is at a disadvantage. So asymmetric information causes scarce resources to be allocated inefficiently, typically requires government intervention to correct. And buyers can possess private information. We have the moral hazard problem and adverse selection. So let's talk about moral hazard problem. So moral hazard problem arises when actually you buy an insurance. Let's say you buy theft insurance for your car, and now you started just not locking the doors of the car. So you're not taking enough care to prevent theft. So that's the moral hazard problem. Adverse selection problem, as I said, you have, for instance, gum disease in the family, or you also have a gum disease, minor gum disease, and you buy dental insurance. So the sellers, in that case insurance companies, do not know this information. So last word, pollution costs. Governments try to reduce pollution by using systems like cap and trade. Cap and trade sets a limit on pollution and lets companies buy and sell the right to pollute. There is also the carbon tax, which makes it more expensive to pollute, so companies will try to reduce their emission. So that's all for this chapter. Thank you for watching this video.